Greetings from Gurgaon, and thank you for watching the second edition of Infra Visioning. As India celebrates 75 years of independence, we have an interesting topic in infrastructure: 25 years of PPP or a quarter century of PPP. That's the topic of our discussion today. It is not that India did not have a history of private capital in its infrastructure development. Railways in the latter part of the 19th century were largely built by sterling capital. Electricity distribution companies in Mumbai, Kolkata, and Ahmedabad existed under private control, as did private generation in pockets in different parts of the country. The green shoots of PPP largely emerged in the early 90s with 8 fast track power projects cleared by the government in 1992. These included Spectrum's Kakinada and GVK's Jegurupada power plants. Also, ILFS's 12-kilometer, looks very small now, but ILFS's 12-kilometer Rao Pitampura toll road in Madhya Pradesh was a precursor of the very large highway development program that was to follow with private capital. However, why do we say it's a quarter century of PPP in 2022? Because it is in the fiscal year 1996-97 or 1997 that can be reckoned to be the official starting year of PPP that year. That year, an expert group on commercialization of infrastructure projects chaired by Dr. Rakesh Mohan submitted a path-breaking report strongly advocating a significant role for private capital in India's infrastructure development. Following this report, the year 1997-98 saw a whole set of activities coming together. The Infrastructure Development Finance Corporation, IDFC, which was set up, and that was expected to play a key role in leading private capital to infra projects. It was also the year when the Telecom Regulatory Authority of India Act, TRAI, was passed by Parliament, the year when the Tariff Authority of Major Ports, TAMP, was set up, and the private sector allowed into ports through an amendment in the Major Ports Trust Act. An ordinance was introduced which brought in the apex regulators in electricity sector, both at the center and the state. And while the National Highways Authority was technically set up in 1995, it was in 97-98 that it really came of age and its capital base was expanded to 500 crores and set up to play a major role in attracting private capital into roads. The erstwhile Planning Commission, recognizing a significant infra deficit, planned to raise GCFI. Now, what's GCFI? GCFI is the gross capital formation in infrastructure as a percentage of GDP. And historically, India was quite low at 3%. And the Planning Commission planned to raise it to 9% by the terminal year of the 11th plan, which was 2012. The strategy crafted under Montek Singh Ahluwalia had at its cornerstone an aggressive PPP thrust. The India Infrastructure Finance Company Limited was set up in 2006 to provide long-term financial assistance to PPP projects. Simultaneously, a series of model concession agreements, MCAs, rolled out from the Planning Commission. And in fact, with all of this, the share of private capital in India's infrastructure development did move up from 22% in the 10th plan period to about 37% in the 11th plan period. The 11th plan, as you know, was from 2007 to 2012, with aspirations to raise PPP to 48% of total infra investments had there been a 12th plan. But there was no 12th plan because after that, the whole 5-year planning process got put into the back burner and NITI came in with its own vision. In current times, PPP has been stagnating at about 3 lakh crores per annum, less than 20% of total infra investments. The fact that PPP started dipping from 2012 onwards was due to reasons which have been thoroughly analyzed and documented. They included inappropriate risk allocation, over-aggressive bidding, twin balance sheet problems, stalled projects, policy conundrums, mounting NPAs, and lack of dispute resolution. Thus, when the NDA came to power in July 2014, they saw a devastated PPP playing field and thus quickly changed tack to public funding of infrastructure projects. It did make some attempts to tackle the root cause of the problem, as evidenced in Sri late Arun Jaitley's maiden budget speech in July 2014 that proposed the setting up of an overarching institution called 3P India. 3P is obviously for PPP, 3P India, with a whopping rupees 500 crore allocation for that new institution. Further, in May 2015, the NDA government constituted a 9-member committee headed by former Finance Secretary Sri Vijay Kelkar that submitted its path-breaking report titled Revisiting and Revitalizing PPP Model of Infrastructure Development in November 2015. The committee strongly endorsed setting up of 3P India once again, picking up from Mr. Jaitley's budget suggestion, and it even laid out the mandate for such an institution, which would include coming to grips with complex PPP issues like renegotiation, independent regulation, equitable risk allocation, amendments to the Prevention of Corruption Act 1988, and expeditious redressal of disputes and capacity building for the sector, particularly at the state level. During this period, from 2014 onwards, PPP version 2.0 soldiered on in a limited manner with the adoption of the annuity and hybrid annuity models that sought to substantially reduce the risk of private investment. New sectors like ropeways, effluent treatment plants for Ganga cleaning, etc., and railways were brought into the PPP ambit. Now PPP is back in reckoning. 100% of the National Monetization Plan, NMP, which has a target of 6 lakh crores over 5 years, and 40% of the National Infrastructure Pipeline, NIP, which has a target of 111 lakh crores over the 5 years, is envisaged to come in through PPP formats. Well, that is a large target of 50 lakh crores of private capital in India's infrastructure development over 5 years. Can these fresh targets be achieved without significant reform of the institution of PPP? Well, it is certainly a challenge. Almost all Indian corporates and commercial lending institutions are extremely wary of investing in greenfield PPP projects, and foreign investors prefer operating brownfield investments. Although it has to be recognized that in the middle of all these difficulties, sectors like telecom, ports, airports, electricity transmission, and renewable energy, PPPs in these sectors have continued to grow and deliver, overcoming many adversities on the way. In her latest budget speech on 1st February 2022, Finance Minister emphasized capacity building measures. Following this up, the Finance Ministry has, in July 2022, announced the setting up of a new body called the Infrastructure Finance Secretariat, IFS, under the Department of Economic Affairs of the Finance Ministry, which is expected to play an integrative role in the revival of the PPP ecosystem. The IFS comes on the back of two special financial institutions that were set up anyway by the NDA government to support infrastructure development with an eye on PPP. One was the National Investment and Infrastructure Fund, set up in 2015 to provide equity support, and very recently, in 2021, India got a new DFI, Developmental Financial Institution, called the National Bank for Financing Infrastructure and Development, NABFID, which, along with its development mandate, is also to spur PPP investments in India's infrastructure. Under the current mantra of public funds to build greenfield projects and private capital to monetize brownfield operating assets, PPP may well be set to see a revival in a modified manner. That would be version 3.0 of PPP and mark a quarter century. Thank you.